If a man is on your mind all the time, it's easy to assume that means you're more invested than he is. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Emotional energy doesn't move in one direction. It responds, it echoes, it mirrors. When someone occupies your thoughts consistently, it's often because a deeper emotional exchange is already happening beneath the surface. And whether he admits it or not, certain things are already unfolding inside him. When a man becomes emotionally attuned to you and your moods, something subtle but powerful shifts inside him. He starts noticing the smallest changes in your energy, even when nothing is said out loud. Your tone, your pauses, the way you respond or don't respond, these details begin to register on a deeper level. This isn't something he consciously plans to do. It happens naturally when emotional connection starts forming. His attention sharpens, not because he's trying to analyze you, but because his emotions are already involved. He begins to sense when something is off before you explain it. He can tell when you're lighter, happier, more open, and he can also feel when you're withdrawn or distracted. Your emotional state starts affecting his own. If you're calm, he feels steadier. If you're distant, he feels unsettled. This is emotional attunement at work. It means his nervous system is responding to yours, syncing in a way that only happens when someone matters. At this stage, he may find himself adjusting his behavior without realizing it. He might soften his tone when you seem sensitive, or become more animated when you're excited. He may hold back certain words if he senses they could hurt you, or lean in more when he feels you pulling away. These adjustments aren't about strategy or control. They're signs that he's emotionally invested enough to care about the emotional impact he has on you. What's important to understand is that emotional attunement creates vulnerability for him. Men are often taught to stay guarded, to focus on logic, to avoid emotional exposure. But when he starts tuning into your inner world, he's stepping out of that protection. Your feelings begin to matter to him, and that gives you influence whether you intend to have it or not. He may not label this as attachment, but his actions reveal it clearly. He also becomes more present during interactions. He listens more closely, not just to your words, but to what's underneath them. He notices patterns, what makes you laugh, what shuts you down, what brings warmth into your voice. This awareness deepens the bond, because feeling seen and understood creates emotional safety, even if neither of you openly names it. At the same time, this attunement can create inner tension for him. When your mood shifts unexpectedly, he might feel confused or unsure how to respond. He may replay conversations in his mind, wondering if he missed something or said the wrong thing. This reflection is another sign that he's emotionally engaged. Indifference never leads to self-reflection. As he becomes more attuned, he may start seeking emotional harmony with you. He wants interactions to feel good, balanced, connected. When there's emotional distance, it doesn't sit comfortably with him. He feels it, even if he can't explain why. This is often when men start reaching out more, checking in, or finding reasons to reconnect, not because they're desperate, but because emotional disconnection feels unnatural once attunement has formed. This level of emotional awareness also changes how he remembers you. Moments with you carry more emotional weight. Conversations linger longer in his mind. He recalls how you felt, not just what you said. Over time, this deepens his emotional memory of you, making your presence harder to replace or forget. Emotional attunement is one of the earliest signs that a man is moving from surface-level interest into emotional connection. It means he's no longer just experiencing you in the moment, but carrying your emotional world with him, even when you're not there, responding to it internally, adjusting himself around it, and slowly allowing your feelings to matter in a way that reshapes how he shows up, how he reacts, and how deeply he begins to feel connected to you. When you become a reference point in a man's daily decisions, it means your presence has moved beyond conversation and attraction into something far more internal. He starts considering you even when you're not physically there, not in a dramatic or obsessive way, but in a quiet, habitual way that signals emotional importance. Before he responds to situations, he briefly checks in with how it might land with you. This mental pause happens automatically because your opinion has begun to matter. He may notice himself adjusting plans, schedules, or priorities without fully understanding why. A decision that once felt neutral now carries emotional weight because it intersects with you. He thinks about whether something will bring you closer or create distance, whether it will make you feel included or overlooked. This is not about approval seeking, but about emotional consideration. When a man integrates someone into his internal decision-making process, it shows that person has influence over his emotional landscape. You become part of how he measures experiences. A good day feels better if he can share it with you. A stressful moment feels lighter if he imagines talking to you about it. Even small choices, like what to say, when to reach out, or how long to wait, begin to revolve around the connection. This shift marks the transition from casual interest to emotional integration, where you're no longer separate from his world, but woven into it. As this happens, he may start anticipating your reactions. He imagines your smile, your curiosity, or even your disappointment. This anticipation shapes his actions more than logic does. He chooses words more carefully, knowing they will be received by someone whose feelings matter to him. He may hold back from impulsive behavior because he doesn't want to disrupt the emotional balance between you. Restraint like this often goes unnoticed, but it reveals a growing sense of responsibility toward the connection. Being a reference point also means he begins evaluating opportunities through the lens of alignment. He wonders whether his choices move him closer to the version of himself that fits into your life. This doesn't mean he loses his independence. Instead, it means his sense of direction is subtly influenced by the bond forming between you. He starts considering whether his actions support or undermine the connection, even if he never voices these thoughts. This process can bring internal conflict. Part of him enjoys the sense of closeness, while another part may resist the vulnerability that comes with it. Letting someone become a reference point means surrendering a degree of emotional autonomy, and that can feel unsettling. He might hesitate, pull back slightly, or become quieter at times, not because his feelings have faded, but because they've deepened beyond his comfort zone. Over time, your role as a reference point strengthens emotional consistency. He becomes more predictable in how he shows up because he wants stability between you. He notices when his behavior affects the dynamic and makes small corrections to restore balance. This awareness creates emotional continuity, which is a foundation for trust, even if neither of you explicitly names it. When a man uses you as an internal compass, it means you're shaping his emotional priorities. Your presence influences how he interprets situations, how he responds to challenges, and how he defines what matters. This influence doesn't come from pressure or demand, but from emotional relevance. You matter enough that his inner world reorganizes itself around the connection, quietly adjusting his choices, his timing, and his emotional investments in ways that feel natural to him, even if he never consciously admits how central you've become in his life. When a man's emotions start being regulated by your presence, it signals that your connection has moved into a deeply psychological space. His body and mind begin associating you with certain emotional states, often before he's consciously aware of it. Being around you may calm him, ground him, or energize him, depending on the dynamic you share. Even brief interactions can shift his mood, creating a sense of balance that didn't exist before you became emotionally significant to him. He may notice that stressful moments feel less intense when he talks to you. Your voice, your reactions, or even a simple message can bring his nervous system out of tension. This doesn't mean he's dependent in an unhealthy way, but it does mean your presence now carries emotional weight. His body recognizes you as a source of emotional safety or stimulation, and that recognition forms automatically through repeated positive emotional exchanges. Over time, he begins to seek this emotional regulation, sometimes without realizing it. When he's overwhelmed, bored, or unsettled, he may feel an urge to reach out, scroll through old conversations, or think about what you would say This urge isn't driven by logic, it's driven by his nervous system remembering how it feels to be emotionally aligned with you. Comfort and connection become linked in his mind. Your absence also starts to register emotionally. When communication slows or space appears, he may feel slightly off, restless, or distracted. He might not connect these feelings directly to you, but they exist because his emotional baseline has shifted. What once felt normal now feels incomplete without the emotional regulation your presence provides. This is one reason men sometimes struggle to articulate what they're feeling. They sense a change but can't easily label it. As this dynamic deepens, he may become more emotionally expressive around you. He feels safer letting his guard down because his system associates you with regulation rather than threat. He might open up more, share frustrations, or show softer parts of himself. This isn't accidental. Emotional regulation creates trust, and trust creates space for vulnerability, even in someone who typically keeps emotions contained. At the same time, this emotional reliance can create inner resistance. A part of him may notice how strongly your presence affects him and feel unsettled by it. He may pull back slightly or try to regain emotional independence, not because he doesn't care, but because the depth of the influence feels unfamiliar. This push and pull often happens when emotional regulation is forming faster than conscious understanding. Your role in regulating his emotions also affects how he experiences future interactions. He begins anticipating how he'll feel around you, and that anticipation draws him closer. If being with you consistently brings relief, warmth, or clarity, his mind and body naturally seek more of it. This isn't about neediness, it's about emotional learning. The brain repeats what feels stabilizing. Over time, your presence becomes emotionally coded. Certain feelings, calm after chaos, excitement after monotony, reassurance after doubt, become associated with you. This coding strengthens the bond because emotions are more memorable than events. He may forget details of conversations, but he remembers how he feels when he's connected to you. This kind of emotional regulation reshapes how he relates to stress, connection, and intimacy. Your presence becomes part of his internal rhythm, influencing how he processes emotions even when you're not there. He carries the emotional imprint of you into his day, responding differently to challenges, calming himself more easily, or feeling more alive because of the emotional alignment he's experienced with you, gradually allowing that regulation to become part of his emotional world. When the idea of losing you begins to create quiet emotional tension in a man, it means the connection has reached a point where absence is no longer neutral. He may not openly admit this fear, and he may not even recognize it as fear, but it shows up in subtle emotional reactions that catch him off guard. Small shifts in your availability, tone, or attention begin to matter more than they used to, triggering a low-level unease he can't quite explain. He might feel slightly unsettled when communication changes, even if nothing negative has happened. A delayed response, a shorter message, or a change in rhythm can create internal questions. Not because he assumes the worst, but because the bond has become emotionally relevant enough that uncertainty registers. Emotional tension grows when someone becomes important enough to lose. This tension often expresses itself indirectly. Instead of dramatic reactions, he may become more attentive, more curious, or more aware of your movements in his life. He may ask casual questions that carry emotional weight beneath them, or find reasons to check in when distance feels unfamiliar. These behaviors are driven by a desire to restore emotional balance, not control it. At times, he may experience internal conflict around this feeling. A part of him enjoys the closeness and the sense of connection, while another part resists the vulnerability that comes with caring. The awareness that you could leave, change, or drift away introduces emotional risk, and risk challenges his sense of stability. This conflict can make him quieter, more thoughtful, or momentarily withdrawn as he tries to process emotions he hasn't fully named. The tension doesn't mean insecurity in the traditional sense. It's often a sign of emotional investment meeting uncertainty. When someone matters, the mind begins to imagine outcomes, not obsessively, but instinctively. He might briefly picture what life would feel like without your presence and feel a subtle tightening in his chest, a sense of absence before it even happens. This awareness can change how he behaves around you. He may become more careful with his words, more consistent in his actions, or more conscious of not taking you for granted. Even small gestures may carry added intention, as if he's trying to protect something fragile without openly acknowledging its importance. At the same time, this tension can create moments of hesitation. He might pause before expressing deeper feelings, unsure of how exposed he wants to be. Caring introduces the possibility of loss, and that possibility can feel heavy. So instead of rushing forward, he may move cautiously, testing emotional safety while trying to maintain connection. The idea of losing you also heightens emotional awareness. He notices your value more clearly when he senses it could disappear. What once felt optional now feels significant. Your presence begins to stand out against the background of his daily life, not because you demand attention, but because emotional attachment has sharpened his perception. This quiet tension doesn't always resolve immediately. It sits beneath the surface, shaping his reactions, influencing his choices, and deepening his emotional engagement. He may not talk about it, but it shows in how he stays connected, how he monitors emotional distance, and how he responds when closeness is restored. The fear of losing access to you becomes a silent motivator, pulling him closer even as he tries to appear steady, revealing that the connection has already crossed into a space where absence would be felt, remembered, and emotionally registered in ways he can no longer ignore. When a man begins seeing himself through your eyes, a deep internal shift takes place that goes beyond attraction or interest. He starts to imagine how he appears to you, not just physically, but emotionally and character-wise. Your perception of him begins to matter, and with that comes a heightened self-awareness. He may reflect on his words, his actions, and even his intentions, wondering how they are interpreted by you. This kind of reflection only happens when someone has emotional influence. He may catch himself replaying interactions, not to criticize you, but to evaluate himself. He thinks about whether he showed up well, whether he was attentive enough, whether he expressed himself clearly. This internal review isn't driven by insecurity alone, but by a desire to be aligned with how he wants to be seen by someone important. Your opinion quietly becomes a mirror, reflecting aspects of himself he hadn't paid attention to before. As this awareness grows, he may feel motivated to improve or adjust certain behaviors. He might become more responsible, more thoughtful, or more emotionally available, not because he feels forced, but because your presence brings out a version of himself he wants to maintain. Seeing himself through your eyes can activate a sense of pride, a desire to be worthy of the connection forming between you. At the same time, this process can expose inner doubts. He may wonder if he's enough, if he measures up to what he believes you deserve. These questions don't always surface consciously, but they influence how he behaves. He might hesitate before making promises, or feel the urge to prove himself in subtle ways. This self-evaluation shows that your opinion carries emotional weight. Your reactions become signals he reads carefully. A smile, a look of appreciation, or a moment of disappointment can shape how he sees himself in the context of the connection. Positive responses reinforce his confidence, while moments of emotional distance can prompt reflection. He doesn't necessarily blame himself, but he considers how his actions might have contributed. This kind of emotional accountability is a sign of maturity influenced by emotional connection. Seeing himself through your eyes also affects how he presents himself to the world. He may become more aware of his values, his goals, and how they align with the image he believes you see. He might speak differently about his life, his ambitions, or his struggles, shaping his narrative in a way that feels authentic yet intentional. Your presence encourages him to be more conscious of who he is becoming. This dynamic can deepen emotional intimacy. When a man allows himself to be seen, even internally, through someone else's perspective, it creates vulnerability. He's no longer operating solely from his own self-concept, but is integrating another person's emotional viewpoint. This integration can be both grounding and unsettling, as it challenges him to reconcile who he is with who he wants to be. Over time, this perspective can influence his self-esteem. If he feels valued and respected by you, it strengthens his sense of self. If he senses judgment or disapproval, it may trigger introspection or withdrawal. Either way, your perception holds significance, shaping his emotional responses and self-image. When a man starts viewing himself through your eyes, it means you've moved into a position of emotional authority in his life. Your reactions help define how he understands himself in the context of connection. This doesn't mean he loses his identity, but it means your presence has become a lens through which he measures his actions, his worth, and his emotional impact, quietly influencing how he grows, how he reflects, and how deeply he invests in the bond forming between you. When a man forms an emotional imprint with you, it means your presence has moved beyond the present moment and settled into his internal world. You don't disappear when the conversation ends or when distance appears. Instead, you linger in subtle ways, woven into his memories, emotions, and reactions. Certain moments start to carry your essence without him consciously trying to attach it. A song, a place, a feeling can suddenly remind him of you, not because he chooses it, but because his mind has already connected emotional meaning to your presence. This imprint forms through repeated emotional experiences rather than grand gestures. It's built when he feels understood, seen, or emotionally aligned with you. Each time an interaction leaves him feeling calmer, lighter, or more alive, his brain records that emotional state and links it to you. Over time, these recordings accumulate, creating a pattern his nervous system recognizes. You become associated with how he wants to feel, and that association stays active even in your absence. He may notice that thoughts of you surface unexpectedly, not in an obsessive way, but in quiet flashes that interrupt his routine. He might remember the way you reacted to something, the sound of your voice, or the energy you brought into a moment. These memories carry emotion, not just imagery. That emotional charge is what makes the imprint strong. Neutral experiences fade easily, but emotionally charged ones remain accessible. As this imprint deepens, his emotional responses begin to shift. Situations that once felt complete may feel slightly muted without you, not empty, but different. He may compare new experiences to how they would feel if you were present, even if he never admits it. This comparison isn't intentional. It's the result of your emotional signature becoming part of his internal reference system. The imprint also affects how he connects with others. Conversations that lack emotional depth may feel less satisfying. Interactions that don't offer the same sense of resonance can seem flat by comparison. This doesn't mean he's constantly searching for you in others, but it does mean his emotional standards have been recalibrated by the connection he's experienced with you. Your influence may also show up in how he self-soothes. During moments of stress or uncertainty, he might unconsciously recall how it feels to talk to you or be around you. Even without reaching out, the memory itself can bring a sense of steadiness. This internal regulation reinforces the imprint, strengthening the emotional association between you and comfort, clarity, or motivation. At times, the imprint can create emotional resistance. He may try to distract himself or stay busy when thoughts of you surface too often, not because the feelings are unwanted, but because they reveal how deeply the connection has settled. Awareness of an emotional imprint introduces vulnerability, and vulnerability can feel destabilizing if he hasn't fully accepted the depth of his feelings. The imprint doesn't fade quickly because it's not based on logic. It's embedded in emotional memory, which operates independently of conscious decisions. Even if circumstances change or communication slows, the emotional residue remains active. It influences how he feels about closeness, how he remembers past interactions, and how open he is to future connection. Over time, this emotional imprint becomes part of his inner narrative. You exist not just as a person he knows, but as an emotional reference encoded into his experiences. Your presence shapes how he feels about intimacy, connection, and emotional safety. He carries that imprint forward, responding to the world through it, reacting with it, and remembering through it, allowing your emotional signature to remain alive in his internal world long after the moment has passed, quietly influencing how he feels, how he connects, and how deeply he registers the bond that has already been formed.